how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to talk about a case that happened in 1993. We are talking about the case of John and Lorena Bobbitt, and there's so much to this. I could not include all the details, but man, if you ever want to go on a really deep dive yourself, there are books, there are shows, there's lots of interviews out there, and I watched, I don't know, a lot of them. So let's get into it.
But to judge what is necessary to be told, it is necessary to see and hear all that is to be seen and heard.
Lorena was born in Ecuador in 1970, and by all accounts, she had a really good childhood. When she got a little bit older, they moved to Venezuela, and she ended up, just by growing up and watching all the different shows that she enjoyed watching. There was a story out there about her enjoying watching the Flintstones because the middle class people even had a microwave, and it was cute. So yeah, she had that American dream, and when she got older, she got to visit America, and she fell in love. So she graduated high school, and when she was looking to go to college, she decided that she wanted to apply for a student visa. So she ended up moving up to the United States, to Virginia, to go to a community college there. In 1987, Lorena's 17 years old, so when she's hitting it out on her own in Virginia, she needs a job. She's trying to make sure that, she can kind of be able to take care of herself, and she's staying with relatives and everything. And she finds a woman that she can babysit for, Jana. And Jana also has a nail salon, and she has Lorena go and work at the nail salon as a nail tech for her. So Lorena spent a lot of time with Jana. I mean, they were together a lot, and really they grew really close. Jana basically ended up becoming like Lorena's best friend over here in the States. So, their relationship was really important to each other. John had a rougher go at life than Lorena. His parents ended up splitting up, and his mother suffered from a mental breakdown. After this mental breakdown, he was sent to go and live with his aunt and uncle and his cousins. And, his aunt and uncle, they were very kind. They would help out family members as they needed. And this actually ended up going for the worse. One of the people that they let stay was a pedophilic uncle of John's, and he did what they did. Um, yeah, when they found out that he was abusing the children, they ended up kicking him out and not letting him back. But, the damage was already done. I don't know about what the therapy looked like, if anybody did attend therapy after that. I know that there were no charges pressed against the uncle. So, I'm not sure what exactly the accountability was except for banishment from the house. And I don't know what exactly the care for the children was, but things like that, they leave scars. When John turned 18, he joined the Marines, and, the structure seemed to suit him really well. John and Lorena had met in 1988, and they got married the following year in June of 1989. They were really happy. I mean, the wedding was beautiful, and Lorena felt like her dreams were becoming realized, and John was excited to have his wife, and I'm sure he probably felt a sense of his life falling into place. After the marriage, Lorena has recounted that things went downhill pretty quickly. She said that John was abusive to her, and that he also enjoyed rough sex, and she was not okay with that. Um, it wasn't a pleasant time for her. John adversely says that Lorena was really jealous and she was abusive to him. He talks about how she would hit him if he looked in the direction of another woman. And to me, I mean, why can't both of them be abusive? It was mutually abusive. And, when it comes to marital rape, that's not something that was even really a big thing back then. Not all states even had it written out as illegal. this was something that was really coming into the public consciousness. There had been a couple cases back, I want to say it was 1979, where the issue was brought up, but it was still just kind of like, well, you're married, so that is unconditional consent, and that is not the case. Lorena was brought up Catholic, so that was another thing that kind of kept her trying at the relationship. It's a big theme throughout the whole discussion. She was uncomfortable with the idea of divorce because it went against her religion, and she was trying to stick it out. If you ask John, another thing that he says is that she was trying to stick it out for her green card. So, you know, John hasn't really always had the best track record of being completely truthful. His story flip-flops a lot over the years, and Lorena stays pretty solid. There are a few things that stay solid about his story, which make me believe those more than the other things that he changes. So it's it really is. It's almost exhausting when you watch their back and forth or like the different things that are said. It's just like both of you guys should have never been around each other. This was the worst. One of the really gross, like, I don't know, it's such a gross statement that John says in one of his later interviews. He talks about the mutual abuse that he says was going on, where he says Lorena was abusive to him and, the back and forth. He talks about, bruises and everything. He goes, well, nobody, well, I'm going to summarize here. He says, well, nobody had to go to the hospital. It wasn't that bad. So, first of all, like, you don't have to go to a hospital for abuse to be bad and for you to need to get away from it. So, there's that first. But then the other thing he says, he goes, uh, yeah, I had bruises and cuts and whatever too, but I just didn't flaunt them. He literally uses the word flaunt, and I'm just like, okay, flaunt? What? I don't know. Just gross, right? The first major record of abuse between John and Lorena happened in 1990. This was Thanksgiving of 1990. Lorena's mom was at their home at the time. They're celebrating the holiday, and John and Lorena got into an argument about what to have on the TV. And Lorena was irritated. She ended up locking him out of the home to where, he couldn't get back in. He actually went around the house. He went through the back door, and she had refused to make him a plate of Thanksgiving dinner, and he ended up making his own plate. When the way that John's attorney tells it is that when Lorena's mom ended up siding with him, that Lorena called the police on him and told him that he was shoving her. So, this isn't very clearly documented, and it looked like the only person I could find really talking about it was John's attorney. It's like a really old article from back when the case was happening. So it's something I wish I could find more about, but yeah, the arguments. I mean, I don't know. I would have loved to hear what Lorena's mom said about it, but really, this shouldn't even be something that we're talking about. It was taken way too far. That's why it became such a sensation, and why really what happened in this situation is something that everybody should be learning from. There's a greater conversation in this case, and it revolves around abuse of your spouse and taking steps to, make sure that everybody's in a safe and happy environment. And just because you marry somebody does not mean that you have unfettered, unconditional consent. You still have to see them as a person. And this was something that wasn't clearly getting through, it seems. I did see some stories out there that said that Lorena had originally tried to go to the police about this abuse, and that's where the Marine Corps, the police didn't help her out in this. So she went to the Marine Corps, and They ended up having a hearing for him in December of 1990, but it seems like at the same time, he also had been discharged, dishonorably, it seemed. I I looked it up, but it it's kind of like everything happens at once at that time, and simultaneously, he leaves the Marines on January 1st of 1991, but he also said him and Lorena both actually said that they didn't even get the result of what had happened in that committee, which, by the way, the committee had told them that they both needed to attend 12 sessions each. John with a men's support group and Lorena with a women's support group, which later on, neither of them said that they knew about it. So, it's one of those other weird things about this one. When John left the Marines, he had a really hard time finding solid employment, and Lorena had to do most of the work. She was really the breadwinner. She was supporting the household, and um, John says that she becomes materialistic and just she wants everything like Jana, her friend, her boss has. But there's nothing wrong with that. She can shoot for that for her dreams. And he wasn't even trying, it seems, to actually hold down a job steady. He ended up spending more time partying with he's got this cousin that's like a brother, because of the way that they grew up. So the retelling of it, and everybody agrees at the time he was in and out of employment. He talks later on about how he had cheated on Lorena, and it she feels taken advantage of, and she feels jealous, but like he's also just a shit suck ass person too. I mean, come on. There was no reason to do that. There was no reason to treat her like that. He talks about it later on, and there's a book out there about it, and it's just like he minimizes it and tries to make it seem like Lorena was there for the green card, and he was kind of taking advantage of it, but it's really no big deal. I don't know. He does a lot of those mental gymnastics to kind of justify his actions. So, it's frustrating because it's like, dude, we know that you're not being completely truthful. How can you minimize this? But he just says it and he goes with it. And I mean, yeah, I get he's probably traumatized from the whole thing, but so was she. She went through some shit at his hands. So it just was not a good situation. Lorena started doing things that weren't really the best thing to do also. She started stealing from Nordstrom's, and her friend and boss, Jana, she had embezzled $7,000 from her, which never got reported. Lorena didn't end up having any real heavy consequences from that. Jana gave her another chance, made her pay back all the money with interest, and Jana's there for her. That was some love right there. Jana seems that she always stuck at Lorena's side. So everybody kind of needs someone like that. Good for them. I mean, not good that Jana was embezzled from, but you know, she forgave Lorena. So who am I to really have that big of an issue with it? You know what I mean? John and Lorena fought. They were notorious for fighting. They didn't understand communication, and basically that's the summary of their relationship. It was hurt extra though for Lorena when she was pregnant, and Lorena wanted to be a mom so bad. That was her dream, and she wanted that American dream, and that American dream included the babies. Now, she had gotten pregnant by John, but John told her that she would be a terrible mother, and then he had told her she needed to get an abortion. There was one story out there talking about him driving her to the abortion clinic and whatever it may have been, but there was also her coming out and saying that she felt like she had to have the abortion or John would leave her, and she didn't want her husband to leave her because of her Catholic faith and trying to make it work. This abortion completely destroyed the little string, I think, that held Lorena's mental health together, and she had a hard time dealing with it. It was something that she was never quite able to forgive, and I wish that at that point she had left. I'm sure she probably wishes that she had left, but it didn't end up working out like that. For whatever reason, they stayed married. Now, in June of 1993, things start getting extra heated. I don't know if it's because they're at their anniversary, June is their anniversary, their wedding anniversary. So I don't know if that's what it was, but for whatever reason, tensions got really high between the two of them. All right. They were, depending on what you read, what article, and what time it is that whoever is giving their interview, John or Lorena, depending on all of that, may change kind of how you see this. Now, Lorena says that she was going to leave John and that John immediately changed and said, "Oh, no, actually, I'm leaving you." And John says that he told Lorena he was leaving her and she was destroyed by it. Whatever it was, they had a fight so intense that John had his friend Robert come down and get ready to help them move because one of them was going to stay in the apartment and the other one was going to move. We're here. We are at the night, June 23rd of 1993. John comes home with Robert after partying. Some sources said that John had been sleeping with other women, but whatever it was, they come home 3 a.m., slam the door. Depending on who you talk to, you're going to see different stories depending on what you read online because it changes, and that's the really frustrating thing because there's just differences that shouldn't be there when people are recounting their stories at different times. Originally, John says that he was too tired and too drunk to do anything and he fell asleep, and Lorena had been trying to initiate sex with him and he was just not into it, too tired. So that's, his story until the rape kit comes back. And when that comes back, they do have evidence that John and Lorena had recently had sex. So now John has to come up with something else, and you will never believe it. John sleep rapes. Yep, that's what it was. He said that he forced himself on her while he was sleeping. It was a sleep, like sleepwalking. So yeah, I don't know about that, but Lorena's story is much different. She says that when he came home and he slammed the door, he woke her up and then he forced himself on her, ripping her clothes in the process, and it was awful. And it kind of brought back everything for her. This is like her snapping time, okay? She said after John had gotten done raping her, he rolled over in the bed and he fell asleep, and she got up and she went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. As Lorena is drinking the water, the light from the fridge is shining into the kitchen, and the light shines off of an 8-inch kitchen knife. And Lorena, by this time, she had just snapped. She talks about what was going through her mind at that moment in an interview that she does. She says, "I was thinking about the abortion and all the beatings and all the rapes, and I just I don't know, I couldn't take it anymore." So she grabs the knife in one hand. She goes to the marital bed where John is sleeping, drunk, whatever it may be. She lifts up the sheet and she grabs his dick in one hand and she takes the knife in the other and she dick chops. okay? She chops it clean off. Clean off, okay? And then, like, he wakes up. There's a recounting later on from him where he says he felt like a jolt of electricity in his groin area. And Lorena is standing there with the dick in one hand and the knife in the other. And she grabs her keys at some point, whatever. Maybe she like throws her purse on. I don't know. She is in shock at this point. He is in shock at this point. She goes down the stairs of the apartment. She gets in her car and she starts it up, and she still has the dick in her hand. Okay. The dick is in her hand. She did not leave it behind for John. She took it and drove off with it. And as she's driving, she goes to turn because she's going to Jana's house. She goes to turn, and the way she says it is she looks over and she realizes there is a dick in my hand. And then she tosses it out the window into a field by a 7-Eleven, and then goes on to her friend Jana's house. And when she gets to Jana's house, Jana is like, "Oh my God, what happened?" She's thinking that, she sees blood on her. Of course, what is she supposed to think? She thinks that John did something to Lorena. Lorena actually speaks up and tells her, "I cut off John's penis." Okay. So at this time, Jana says, "Nope, we are involving the police." They call the police and they report it. And meanwhile, John comes out and he says, "Lorena cut my dick off." And then Robert takes him to the hospital. What a fucking way to wake up. What a fucking way to wake up, man. I don't know if Robert was actually like the designated driver that night. I have a strong suspicion that neither one of them were actually sober when they drove. But I think that would probably sober me up pretty quickly if my best friend or one of my real good friends came in the room and was like, "They cut my dick off." What do you do? What do you do at that point? You're sober and you're like, "Let's get you to the fucking hospital." I don't even think an ambulance would have been quick enough. So he rushes John to the hospital, and John walks in, and John tells the story that like he went in there and they saw blood everywhere, and the ER doctor thought it was his wrist, but he lifts up. He shows him. He shows him the dick, the missing dick, and there's just like this gaping wound, okay? And can you imagine? The hospital ended up having to call in an on-call surgeon and a second one. These were Dr. James Shen, who specialized in urology, and Dr. David Berman, who specialized in plastic surgery. The doctors told John that if they weren't able to find the dick soon, that John would end up having to just have the wound sewed up. And this can you imagine? His life would have been destroyed. He talks about how he was having suicidal thoughts at that point, and yeah, I can imagine. So, just at the last moment, as he's getting ready to go into the operating room because they were just going to sew him up, they get a call from the police that they found it. Can you believe it? What are the odds? Yeah, no, they took the estimated location from Lorena, and they had dispatched a bunch of police out there to that field, and they were walking around. Okay. They found the dick by stepping on it. All right. They stepped on it, and then they realized, "Oh my God, it's a dick." All right. And oh man, what a wild time. And I wish I was making this next part up, but I'm not. Do you remember how I mentioned that there was a 7-Eleven right there by that field? Well, they needed, and I don't know why they didn't come prepared with like an ice box with ice, like a medical grade one. That seems like an oversight to me. I feel like they probably should have, since they knew they were looking for a dick that needed to be sewed on to somebody. But anyway, I guess somebody forgot to make that call. I don't know. I guess maybe it would be kind of easy to overlook that, but I don't know. I feel like that would be like number one, like get a medical ice chest for the dick, but they didn't. So they ended up having to use what was available to them. And that 7-Eleven actually provided the perfect transport container. They had the dick delivered to the hospital in a brown paper hot dog bag from 7-Eleven that had been filled with ice with the dick to keep it preserved. And holy shit, what the fuck? A hot dog bag for the dick, all right? The dick was in a hot dog bag. His dick literally went on an adventure completely without him. If dicks could talk, right? The surgery that John had to undergo was called a penile replantation. This took the doctors working together about 9.5 hours to complete. There's all these tiny little blood vessels, and, they know they only have one chance to do it right, and they want it to work. Like, overall, more than anything, they want the dick to work. The penile replantation would not have been considered a success if the dick didn't work, okay? So, they did their best. And when John came out of the anesthesia and the doctor was able to tell him that the dick was reattached, according to John, it felt like Christmas. And I bet being reattached, what are the odds? Like, what are the odds that this whole thing, if this wasn't for real life, I would never believe it. Like, if you wrote a story like this, I'd be like, there's no fucking way. But there is way. I don't know. What is this? What? I don't know. It's wild, okay? That's what it is. 2 weeks after the surgery, John was able to get his first erection. So, good for him. It worked. He was so excited he called his mom. Very uncomfortable conversation. She directed him to his dad for more. The wild thing, too, is that not only was Lorena arrested, of course, that's a very aggressive act right there. Lorena was arrested. John was also arrested after he was able to come out of the hospital, from what I understand. He was arrested for marital rape or marital sexual assault, and Lorena obviously was arrested for the dick chop. The trial against John for the sexual assault was a closed trial. It wasn't something that really became big because it was a sexual assault case, so it wasn't something that was really shared with the media. Lorena's trial, on the other hand, that was a big one. That one drew everyone. And there were people that had shirts outside of the courtroom, very colorful shirts. And it was a wild time, okay? Being there on the scene, it sounds like it was a fun time, like people getting together and not taking the right lessons, okay? Everybody talks about the dick chop, but can we talk about the abuse between the spouses? Can we talk about that? Because I know that the world was very different back then, but there's still some people who ascribe to that more traditional idea of the woman being property to the men. So that's an unfortunate reality that still happens today, but cases like this are what help women be able to break more free. Men too. We have to talk about men's abuse too. And that's in this case also. Why can't everybody just be nice to each other, Lorena's trial, it proceeded as you imagine, the circus that it was, and she ended up being determined to be not guilty on reason of insanity for malicious wounding. What this meant for Lorena was that she had 45 days in a mental hospital, and then she was able to go on with her life. It was determined by the jury that she really just lost it, the years of abuse and everything that had happened to her, the rapes, it all combined. Oh, the abortion, the depression that she had from all of that. And her mental health was just in the trash can. So that night, whatever it was, she snapped. In the end, it kind of seems like Lorena and John they had a tumultuous relationship, but they both got off easy compared to what it could have been. I mean, straight down to death, dying, murder, whatever. It could have come out a lot worse than it did. Now, they ended up going on to lead very different lives. Lorena ended up finding a man that she chose to spend the rest of her life with. She did not choose to marry him, but they do have children together, and it seems like her life has been real peaceful. She's tried to, stay out of the spotlight. John, on the other hand, his life has been different. Okay. I wish that they could have pushed more some kind of mental health for him. I think he probably had some kind of issue after that. I mean, who wouldn't have an issue after the incident, after what happened? But I don't know what kind of mental health he had. Whatever it was, if he did have any, it wasn't enough to help him because he ended up going down a worse path. He got arrested more times for domestic violence, and he hasn't kept a clean name. He did participate in a few porns, and he made some money off of that, I'm sure. The first one was just to show, that it was together and it worked. But later on, he went off and he decided to elect for a penis enlargement surgery. I don't know what that one was called, like the other one, but whatever. He looked to go and have a surgery to make his dick bigger, and the surgery ended up leaving him with what is has been referred to as a deformed dick, okay? And this porn was called Frankenpenis. I'm telling you, I don't know what this story is. It feels fake sometimes, but it really happened, I guess. I don't know. I never watched any of them, but the first one I think was like the highest grossing adult video of all time. Wild. But I get it. Like, you know, how often do you hear about a dude having a dick chop and getting it reattached and it like working? I don't know. That feels like it doesn't happen very often. So, like an intrigue thing for most people, I imagine. After the decades have gone by, Lorena has come out more to talk about, what she felt got missed in the midst of the whole sensational dick chop. The message that really is behind this one is abuse. It's not okay. You shouldn't abuse another person, and you can only take abuse for so long before you snap. So, just I guess kind of a reminder out there to everybody to be nice to your spouse and take care. So that's the story of John and Lorena Bobbitt. Thanks for hanging out and going over the story with me. I really appreciate all the support, and I hope to see you next time. Have a good one.